In ancient times, a king ruled a kingdom. He was a good and kind-hearted man, but not very intelligent. Therefore, he was always on the lookout for intelligent and wise people to improve his subjects and help his country progress and subjugate its enemies. Even his existing subjects did not seem to be of much use to him. They merely offered advice and collected salaries in return, but their advice lacked the impact the king desired. This thought often troubled him. One day, to resolve this dilemma, the king decided to take a trip to the forest with his courtiers. Perhaps nature would lead him to some answers. The king reached the forest and, after much enjoyment and recreation, began his journey back when he came across a strange sight. A man was sitting under a large tree, talking to himself, appearing insane and strange from a distance. The king paused. The thought crossed his mind. Either this man was insane or a man of extraordinary intelligence, lost in his own world. Intrigued, the king, accompanied by his courtiers, approached the man and began a conversation. The man appeared half mad, but his words held a strange charm. The king gently questioned him. "Young man, are you crazy to be talking to yourself?" This madman would save the king's entire kingdom? No one could have imagined. The madman smiled and replied, "You are crazy and so are your subjects. I'm perfectly fine. I just want this forest cleared and magnificent palaces built here, and I myself will be the king of those palaces." His words held a strange confidence and boldness that seemed beyond the reach of an ordinary madman. The king and his courtiers were astonished by his response, for such words were only the work of a madman or someone possessed of valor and extraordinary wisdom. The king stared at him silently for a while. Then, when he consulted the courtiers about the man, their hidden greed immediately rose to the surface. They began to converse quietly among themselves. Someone feared that if this man became the king's chief advisor, they would become his slaves, diminishing their importance. One courtier quietly remarked, "This is a danger. He might overpower us all." Another quickly added, "No, he's more than half mad. We shouldn't expect any intelligence from him. Therefore, tell the king to take him with him." The courtiers believed that this man, what harm can he do to us? But God had other plans. Finally, the courtiers advised the king to take him to the palace. If he turned out to be brave, he would be useful. But if he really turned mad, they would release him later. The king, acting on their courtiers' advice, said thank you God, and with some pressure, convinced the man to come with him. But on the way, the man suddenly turned his horse in the opposite direction and tried to escape. The king and his courtiers immediately set out after him. With great strength, they brought him back under control and set off for the palace. Madman. The king and his courtiers were astonished by his response, for such words were only the work of a madman or someone possessed of valor and extraordinary wisdom. The king stared at him silently for a while. Then, when he consulted the courtiers about the man, their hidden greed immediately rose to the surface. They began to converse quietly among themselves. Someone feared that if this man became the king's chief advisor, they would become his slaves, diminishing their importance. One courtier quietly remarked, "This is a danger. He might overpower us all." Another quickly added, "No, he's more than half mad. We shouldn't expect any intelligence from him. Therefore, tell the king to take him with him." The courtiers believed that this man, what harm can he do to us? But God had other plans. Finally, the courtiers advised the king to take him to the palace. If he turned out to be brave, he would be useful. But if he really turned mad, they would release him later. The king, acting on their courtiers' advice, said thank you God, and with some pressure, convinced the man to come with him. But on the way, the man suddenly turned his horse in the opposite direction and tried to escape. The king and his courtiers immediately set out after him. With great strength, they brought him back under control and set off for the palace. As soon as they reached the palace, a huge crowd of people gathered there. Everyone was shouting joy and congratulating the king. The king and his courtiers were astonished and asked what this congratulation was for. The people replied, "Your Majesty, On the same route you took to hunt the lion, a huge enemy army was lying in wait, armed with powerful weapons. We were convinced you would never return." Hearing this, everyone's eyes displayed a mixture of surprise, gratitude, and worry. The people then exclaimed happily, "Your Majesty, you were very clever. You changed your route." The king silently looked at the madman and thought to himself, "This is it. This man is truly no ordinary man. He is something special." Then he turned to the courtiers and ordered, "Hurry up and prepare a wonderful chair for this man. He will be with me from today on." The courtiers, already terrified, immediately exclaimed, "Your Majesty, this man is mad. He might harm you. Wise men like us should be with you." But the king dismissed their words and said, "Seriously, no. This man is wiser than all of you. He saved us from a dangerous enemy by remaining silent. This is the mark of a wise man. If it weren't for him, none of you would have known that the enemy was lurking on the road. Our safety is due to his cleverness." Hearing this, the madman smiled and proudly sat down on the chair placed next to the king. But at this moment a new tension arose in the palace. The courtiers, generations after generations, had occupied those chairs for centuries. Under no circumstances could they tolerate a stranger, and a supposedly insane person sitting next to them. They were jealous and began plotting against him. But no force in the world can bring down the one whom Allah bestows with honor. The choice of honor and dishonor rests solely in his hands. After listening to this story, you will feel a deep sense of gratitude for God. Your faith in nature will become even stronger. God can demote a king to a beggar and elevate a madman to a king. And when he wishes to elevate someone, all the world's plots fail. How do the courtiers' plots, their jealousy, and their opposition honor that madman? Let's find out. One morning, when the palace was fully decorated, a few members of the public stepped forward and approached the man everyone called the madman. They politely said, "Brother, peace be upon you. We want to discuss something important with you." The public replied, "Brother, you have no idea about our king's principles and courtly etiquette. We only want to ensure that you don't take any step that results in punishment due to some misunderstanding." The madman, surprised, asked, "What do you mean?" "I will be punished. I never asked to be brought here to the palace. What trouble is this? Take me back." Hearing this, a slight wave of joy passed across the subjects' faces. They thought their plan was succeeding, but they couldn't force the king out of the palace by intimidating him. Instead, they tried to persuade him with gentleness, saying, "Brother, you have no idea what you could gain if you listen to us." A fool who was already scared by the word punishment. He was terrified. He immediately panicked and said, "Okay, tell me what to do." Seeing the opportunity, a scribe, himself a close associate of the king, whose seat was now occupied by the madman, stepped forward and said to the courtier, "It's customary in our court that the court begins only when someone slaps the king or does something that awakens the court." The madman, completely lacking in intelligence, immediately said, "Oh, it's no big deal. I slapped him. I can even kick the king." The subjects, suppressing their laughter at his foolishness, praised him and happily encouraged him further. "When the king sits down, go and slap him hard on the neck. Then you will see the king will be so pleased that he will bestow numerous honors upon you." The madman mistakenly agreed. The next day, when the court was held and the king was seated on his throne, the madman stepped forward with utmost simplicity and slapped the king hard on the neck. Away. But as soon as the crown fell from the ground, a dangerous scorpion emerged from beneath it. The king was immediately startled, and it took him no time to realize that if he had placed the crown on his head, the scorpion would have stung him. With a heart full of gratitude, the king embraced the madman. Embracing him, the king said joyfully, "My dear, this is me. There's only one person who truly loves me. If he hadn't slapped me, today might have been my last day. By the king's order, a lavish feast was arranged for the madman, along with a beautiful palace. The subjects, already jealous of him, became even more worried. Fear gripped their hearts, fearing that if this continued, this madman would inherit their thrones. So they began whispering among themselves, "This guy is rising so fast. Something must be done. Otherwise all our honor and status will be lost." Meanwhile, the half-madman was thinking to himself, "These subjects are truly genuine and compassionate people. Look at the powerful advice they gave me." He happily resolved to accept whatever they said from now on. The next day, after consulting again, the subjects returned to the madman's palace, all of them seething with anguish. But the Johari sat with smiles on their faces. Amushir began the conversation gently. "Brother, how did you like yesterday's trick? If you hadn't slapped him, the king would have suspected you and you might have been punished." The madman, now living comfortably in the palace, smiled and said, "Yes, you guys are very nice. Your trick changed my fate." The people took the opportunity. He considered it a blessing and set his next trap. But it is true that whoever is protected by Allah can harm him. Anyone can plot against you as much as they want. But if you are truthful and Allah is with you, no one can harm you. The subjects addressed the madman and said, "Now listen to one more thing. In the morning, when the court is held and the king is about to sit on his throne, you must immediately pull his chair back. You will receive half the kingdom. This is not an easy task, but you will be brave enough to do it." The madman quickly replied, "What about one? I can even pull 2 chairs." The subjects, as usual, praised him and left. In the morning, the same thing happened in the court. As soon as the king was about to sit on his throne, the madman saw the opportunity and pulled the chair back. But the king, controlling himself, stood up before falling. When he looked back, he was astonished to see that one of the chair's legs had already broken from the inside. The king immediately turned to the madman, embraced him, and in a loud voice addressed everyone, "Look how clever and loyal this man is. If it weren't for him, I would have fallen to the ground along with my chair and been injured." Then he awarded him a medal and appointed him general of his army, and his bravery was once again praised in court. Seeing this, the people held their heads in bewilderment. Those who tried to overthrow him only grew in prestige. Now, fed up, they started saying to each other, "What a mess this is. We just want him punished. The king to be angry and hanged, but he always wins." Seeing the situation slipping out of hand, the conspirators hatched a dark plan, one that could shake the entire kingdom. They all decided to secretly contact the neighboring king, provoke him to war, and promise to attack him. But the king was assured that the people were with him. "We would handle everything. All you have to do is kill our general. Leave everything else to us." The people sent this conspiratorial letter, and after investigating the other kingdoms, they agreed. Now the only thing left was to provoke their king into war. So the people wounded a few of their men and came before the king, saying, "Your Majesty, how long can we wait? If something happens to you tomorrow, the entire kingdom will cry. The enemy attack is imminent. We must decide now." In short, the king has sounded the war drum and sent his army, along with his subjects, to battle. Now the commander of the army, Salar, is mad, but even everyone together can do nothing to the madman. Only the people behind him are laughing. When he is about to attack the enemy country, when they reach the border, the army was fully prepared. When the commanders from both sides entered the forest, the madman ordered everyone to stop. "I will fight the king first, as he was the commander." The entire army stopped. The madman called out loudly, "O king, come out!" The enemy king arrived, and the two stood face to face in the middle of the forest. Suddenly, a ferocious lion emerged from the bushes and attacked the enemy king. The madman, who originally only wanted to wield his sword, harboring no personal enmity, immediately charged forward and engaged the lion. After a fierce battle, he killed the lion and brought back the king, wounded. The enemy king was covered in blood but survived. Seeing his army, the king said, "No, there will be no battle. I forgive that commander. He saved my life. He is a very brave and intelligent man. We do not want war, but arrest and imprison the subjects who accompanied him." Hearing this, the madman immediately drew his sword and roared, "Beware of touching any of the scribes." Seeing his loyalty, the king exclaimed to himself, "What a remarkable man he is. He saves his enemies and forgets himself." The madman's fame quickly spread throughout the kingdom. His bravery and truthfulness won everyone's hearts. The king even gave him his daughter in marriage. The subjects, already seething with anger, remained silent at this sight. But revenge for the humiliation they had suffered became their motto at every turn. Now the two kingdoms began to unite. Their enmity turned into friendship. But the subjects decided to create another trap. They told each other that if they didn't stop this madman, tomorrow they would all become his slaves. He must be eliminated. Everyone unanimously agreed. But among them was an old advisor. Experienced and soft-hearted, he made a remarkable statement. He stood up and spoke with utmost seriousness. "Friends, listen to me carefully. God has bestowed a special status, position, and quality upon every person in the world. And remember, to whom God bestows respect, no power in the world can take that respect away. Even if you kill him, remember that his respect will only increase. And if you think that his death will restore your lost position, you are mistaken. One day the truth will be revealed, and you will all meet your end. So submit to God's will. That is what is best for us." He took a breath and then said softly, "Just understand one thing. He is apparently insane, but God has blessed him with a unique quality. If luck permits, even if the entire kingdom turns against him, he will win alone. So instead of engaging with him, embrace truth." The entire kingdom repented of its jealousy, and after some time the madman died, and the people regained their positions. So, friends, this story seems like a funny one, but it hides a true truth that we must accept. Truth, luck, and the grace of God. We should never envy anyone, because if someone achieves a position or status and succeeds, it may be the result of their hard work. They may have good luck or possess qualities that God has bestowed upon them. Try to adopt those qualities and work hard. Embrace truth. Perhaps you too will receive the same respect. But do not be envious. History bears witness to the fact that hypocrites and envious people never succeed. The battle always belongs to the truthful. I hope you learned a lot from this story. Our channel has excellent and engaging Sabak Amos stories. If you like them, be sure to check them out. If you enjoyed this story, please like it, share your feedback in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell for more such interesting Sabak Amos stories. We appreciate your support. Thank you.